Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Show Me Your Sauces. I'm Snappy, and I'm joined, as always, by my dear friend and co-host Dion. How's it going, Dion?
What's cracking lacking? You ready for some sauces?
I'm ready for some sauces. What do you got in store for us today? What are you cooking? What are you brewing? What's the plan?
Well, it's the tea of the Pharaohs, Karkade, but I grew up knowing it as Jamaica tea,
Oh, I
agua
didn't
fresca.
realize those were connected. Like
Yeah, I
Jamaica,
didn't
that's a
know that all these
classical.
years. I'll be honest.
Right, because Jamaica is classical, iced tea. It's like a Latino drink, right?
Yeah, yeah, yep. It's hibiscus flowers that are steeped with a lot of sugar, maybe some mint and lime, and it's one of your classical drinks next to tamarindo, horchatas, melon. You'll see it at a taco stand. The different colored waters in the big jar.
Right.
Um, Turns out it's the tea of the Pharaohs.
So what is this about? What do you mean tea of the pharaohs?
Well,
Break this down
in
for me.
Egypt,
This is all new.
yeah, well, hibiscus in Egypt it was the tea of the Pharaohs. It was a red drink. It has herbal properties, and it colors other drinks. And because that's part of what we're talking about today is red liquids along with bread. Because this is a continuation of last week's episode. Before we continue, just trigger warning. We talk about wild stuff from the past, sex, drugs, rock and roll. Also, like, subscribe, share, leave comments. We like all that stuff. But in our
And also,
previous
this is
episode,
all speculation and for fun, right?
oh
Don't
yeah,
take
hundred
any of it
percent fun,
serious,
hundred
right?
percent fun. If you ain't having fun, you might as well go back to underneath your rock. Um,
Exactly.
so in the previous episode, we were chatting about pasta, different types of pasta. Fideo, a toasted pasta I grew up with, as well as spaghetti alla assassina, which is a toasted spaghetti that's fried first with the tomato, so it's emulsified differently, caramelized. And then we talked about the connection of that to ancient mystery rites, and in terms of ancient bread, how it connects to ancient bread rites in Greece, China, Saudi Arabia. Now imagine that pasta is a flat piece of bread that's cut in little strips, little snakes. So, but it's still a flat piece of bread that's used for other reasons. So today we'll continue on that, which was with that red liquid emulsifying that bread.
Right? Exactly. The red liquid emulsifying the bread and the wine, right?
Oh,
Ceres and Liber, as they would say in Rome. And what's so funny is in the Roman tradition, it's actually like those are metonyms. So Ceres will stand in for wine, and Liber will stand in for bread.
exactly, exactly. Um, so we'll get
Or
the
sorry,
recipe
sorry,
started
other way.
early.
I inverted it. It's the other way around. Sorry. Liber
Right, right.
stands for Ceres
Yep.
stands for bread. Sorry.
So we're gonna start the recipe early because I'm gonna let this steep. So let me tell you what I'm gonna do here.
Right.
Here it is, right here, hibiscus. I'll bring the camera down here so we could see our working area there. All right. So this right here, hibiscus flowers, dried hibiscus flowers, that's turned into Jamaica tea or the tea of the Pharaohs, ancient drink. What I'm going to do is rinse it in a colander just to get the dust off really quick. Right here, you see this right here, and this is 2 cups right there. And this is just a quick rinse just to get the dust and debris and dirt off. All righty. And then right here, I have a pot of boiling water. And this is about 8 cups of boiling water right here. I'm going to put the hibiscus flowers straight in, and I'm going to bring them to a boil. And then once it's boiling for like four, let's say 8 minutes, I'm going to turn it off and let it steep for 20 minutes. So what I'm going to do though, right now, show you a little secret to your herbs. They won't show you this on the other recipes, but check it out. Sea salt, just a little pinch. That's all. And what that's going to do is help the bitterness and bring out the essence of the herbs. And if we're using this to dye, it would help with the tannins because this is also used to dye. That's part of what the herbs that we're using here. That they're medicinal, they're used to dye things, and they're used for pleasure, for food, for culinary purposes. All righty, so I will bring this to a boil, and then once it's boiling, about 8 minutes, I'm going to turn it off, and then we'll steep it for 20 minutes.
Oh, beautiful.
All right. So with that, let's talk about some sources and the mythologies connected to this stuff. You know what I'm saying? And a presentation building off last week. So if you could go to the first pick, please.
Absolutely. Oops, 1 second. Sorry, folks. Here we go.
So we were talking about bread and usage of ritualized usage of bread. And we see that in the Bible, the Eucharist, but there's also other areas. Now, we talk about this saying a lot right here from Matthew, where it talks about on the Sabbath, Jesus and the disciples go out into the wheat fields and start picking from the tips of the wheat and eating them. And it gets some of the people in the community pissed off, the rabbis, because they're not supposed to be doing that on the Sabbath. But there's other reasons for doing that. Not just because they're hungry and they want to go pick the tip of the wheat. You can go to the next picture.
Well,
Oh, that's hibiscus right there. Just so you know, dried hibiscus. Go one more pick. There you go.
there we are.
Now, this is wheat that would have been used in that saying that we previously looked at, but you can see it's dyed purple because that has a mold on the tips, and that's called Claviceps purpurea. The burning purple, Saint Vitus, or Saint Anthony's fire, whatever which one it is, drove people crazy. That's ergotism. That's what's
Ergotism.
turned
And this
into
is,
LSA or LSD. It makes people hallucinate and go wild.
yep. And this is one of the other reasons why the rabbis are getting upset because most of the time, this will cause people to go crazy and die. Or even in rare occasions, they'll develop necrosis of the flesh and then die. So ergotism is extraordinarily dangerous. But for some reason, when they're with, you know, Jesus the Magi, they can go and grab and eat of the ergot no problem.
Yeah. And so this is connecting. That's what we talked about, the Eleusinian rituals, the Eleusinian rites, and different ceremonies. Wheat is included. In our previous
Always.
series, All Roads Lead to Bulk, we talked about the cheese and how the cheese starters and the bacteria and actual cheese was buried with the leaders of the tribe because that's what they used to start. So there's different cultivars of wheat that were cultivated to have certain properties. Maybe in modern times we want extra fiber in the bread we get, so they cultivate the wheat to have that or more quantity. But back in the day, it may have been cultivated to have more of these little purple molds on it. And they found this in a lot of different archaeological digs. And this is part of bread is beer. Is what we're connecting it to because all the bread rituals are connected to the beer rituals as well. So all right, let's go to the next image. And so the Reinheitsgebot, just so you know, in 1516 in Europe was invented to keep ergot out of the beer. You know, they only wanted pure ingredients. You know, the water, the just keep it simple because it's up to the bread bakers and the brewers to control the amount of ergot that would make it into bread and beer. They had to be diligent. And so the church tasked them to that at a certain point. So we're talking about bread and pasta in ancient times. This disc right here goes back to Babylon or Sumerian. It's Akkadian cuneiform tablet. And I'll give you the name because we got to give you the sources and the sauces. It's YBC 8958 Akkadian tablet that has several recipes for the world's oldest pot pie.
Oh, wow.
A pot pie. Because that was one of the titles of the episode is coffins. Because mind you, a coffin is not something you bury dead people in. It's dead humans in. That's later. What a coffin's used for in this sense is to bury dead animals, to bake them, to encrust them, to preserve them for later to eat them. Now, the coffins on the cover of the thumbnail that you might have saw, they didn't eat those. They ate the inside it. It was just a baked crust. It didn't taste good. It was just yeah, like that, something like that, to encase to keep the meat preserved.
Well, think about it
Actually,
this way. Like you when you look at those old school ovens, right? Oftentimes they're basically just open flames. What you see in some of these images from these medieval texts is they're taking the coffin and they're sticking it right in the fire, right in the charcoal of the wood,
yeah.
right? And so this whole piece of bread is getting roasted. It's getting covered in guck. It's not meant to be eaten. It's meant to protect your stew, which is on the inside, because oftentimes you don't have pots. So
Yeah.
this is both your pot and your food and your plate. It's the whole deal.
And so, mind you, next week I think we have some special guests who are going to come on and cook coffins live.
Yep, we got a couple of our friends, three of our friends who are going to be coming, Virgie Lee, as well as her two friends, Christians and Felix DeMello, and they're going to make for us a coffin pie, and that should be a lot of
Woo! Live. Love it. Love it. Okay, so now the connection to coffins and the dead and beer and bread. We would say that you've heard beer is life and bread is life, but it's also connected to the dead and our ancestors and a lot of these rituals. So let's go to the next image. So right before that, I showed you the oldest inscription for a pot pie for bread. Here's one of the oldest inscriptions, a drawing, and this is taken from the stela, and what it is. And so right now, I'm going to turn my Karkade hibiscus off, put my lid on, let it simmer for the next 20 minutes. So now we'll get back to the presentation. So this is one of the oldest images of beer drinking in the world. And you can see they used to drink it in reeds, hollowed out reeds, and it was a communal experience. And you'll see animals as part of it.
You know
Um,
what it reminds me of is like a bombilla. What they
yeah, yeah,
use
yeah,
for
yeah.
drinking tea
Or yerba
there.
mate. Yerba mate, you put
Exactly,
it in the gourd, and that's the gauchos in Argentina, the bombilla. Um,
exactly.
Now, mind you, in this version, the beer was thicker. It's like a thick thingy. That's why you need to strain it. And they would build little filters or strainers to strain it out. Now, there's more to this story. Go to the next image. Because here's another old image, Eucharistic, and deals with the Levant, Canaan, everywhere over there. They were doing these ceremonies. They're called the Marzeah ceremonies. We talked about this in previous episodes, where they'd go party with the dead. So, like,
Yep.
say your grandpa died, you would go to the graveyard or tomb, however it is, and you would brew beer. You would brew beer, and they would bring animals as well. Now, we talked about the possibility of the animals being used for bioprocessing through their urine or their milks, different types of psychoactives to break them down to make them easier to ferment with the beers. And so we got multiple episodes on that. But today, the beer, brewing psychoactive beer. Now, mind you, there's Jeremiah 16:5 in the Bible, where it tells them, the text forbids them from entering houses of mourning and doing Marzeah feasts associated with the dead. It's banned in the Bible. They tell them, hey, stop going to the graveyard and drinking and communing with the dead in a divinatory feast. All right, go to the next image. Now, mind you, the beer that they used to make back then was made from bread. This is twice baked bread called bapir. Um, and they make these bread cakes, and that's what they would ferment, and it would speed up the process. So the bread and the beer and the consumption and the mystery rites are all entwined, as well with the ancestors and the dead. Now, mind you, originally it's hot in my kitchen, so just so you know. And if it's can't take the heat, get out the kitchen. You've heard that before. Now, listen, originally, the brewers of beer in ancient times were women. Even in this instance, it's Ninkasi is the female goddess of brewing. And it's the women that are brewers. It was the monks that took it over later, the patriarchy, and banned the women. but originally it was the women that did the brewing. It deals with yeast and yeast cultivars, bacteria, strains, kitchen, keeping the pot, keeping the fire, keeping the hearth, and keeping the tribe alive, and passing this down through continuity through a matriarchal lineage. All right, so there's a saying that says, "He who does not know beer does not know what is good." A Sumerian proverb. Now go to the next image. Can you read this? Because we're going to get into Persian area, because we talked about all roads lead to Balk. We're back again with that Iran war, that special part of the world. And this is the goddess Anahita.
All right, let's read. It says, Mortal, listen to the goddess of waters that make the grain rise. This bread you do not need for your belly alone. You place it before me on the clean mat, before you set your teeth to it. Take spring water that I have made flow, the wheat that my rains have swollen, and a little butter from your herds. Mark its face with your finger as a sign that you know whence the gift comes, and only then break it and feed your kin. Oh, so there's a special ritual that you have to honor the great mother before you're allowed to eat her bread.
And what bread am I talking about? I'm talking about dron, Dron, dron bread, darun. And in the Homa ceremonies that we've talked about, Soma and Homa, where they drink this mystery drink of the gods, and people talk about it has dairy in it, but people don't talk about the bread that goes along with it. The bread that goes along with it. In Zoroastrian mysteries, they have the dron bread. We've talked about some of the symbology of the 9 marks. Remember, in the different episodes, they put the 9 cuts on the bread. All right, now go to the next image. This is from Nuruz. Nuruz is New Year's. This is Farsi, and this is some of the symbologies and rituals they do, ancient Zoroastrian rituals. You see the bread there, and they're marked up with symbols on them. And this was used in a ritualistic manner, also in the Zoroastrian rituals, because we've talked about the Homa ceremony in different aspects. Go to the next. All right, so this is called, one of the things we're talking about is called Miyazda bread, not Auto Mazda, but Miyazda, which is a form of dron that's eaten. Next image. So here in the Zoroastrian ceremony for the Homa, we've talked about the different elements in there: the sacred fire in the pots, in the spoons, and the whisks, and the cups, and the fruits, and the herbs, and because it's a kitchen.
Right.
It's a kitchen. They even got the masks, everything, sanitary. And each one of those priests is pointing to an object right there. If you could see. Their hand is all pointing to something. Next image, please. It's called the barsum. It's a whisk. Your kitchen whisk. I should stir this since we're talking about that. Woo!
Beautiful.
Smells delicious. Mighty fine there. So this is and talk about a Phaedra and a Phaedra whisk, the barsum, to impart and to emulsify these liquid concoctions and food concoctions for the gods. Because most of the gods have a food concoction, whether it's in ancient India, ancient Greek gods. They got the Amarita, they got the ambrosia, all these nectars of the gods. The gods are fed to kept happy. Prasad.
Right. You gotta do these magical rites in order to ensure that the ancestors are fed and that the gods are fed. Like, this is the big thing. And we see this across so many cultures. Like, I'm going to show so many different sources when we get into my
Woo!
presentation. And
Well,
we'll
let's go
get
fast
into
then.
we'll even get into some Zoroastrian sources. You
That's
know,
right. So go to the next image then.
it's wild, eh?
All right. So part of the Zoroastrian iconography, or let's say portfolio, includes Mithra and the Mithraic feast. Um, Here, this is an old fresco from a Pompeii bread seller. And once again, you see the bread that has these symbols on it. And they were used in Mithraic feasts. In the Mithraic feast, they would mark it with the cross on it originally. These pieces of bread, round cakes, flat cakes. representing Sol Invictus, the solar disk. This is the Aegis, the shield or the halo behind the head. It's
Oh, that's so wild because I found the same thing with the dron. I found some pictures of the dron bread that they were using, and their solar disc with a cross on it.
Yeah, exactly. Um, it's all going back to. I mean, so the cross mark you'll see it in underground temples. Um, and plus, you could break the bread to share it, like the Eucharist and share with the initiates when it's quartered like that. And you know, if we wanted to get into astrotheology, we talk about quartering the universe. That's how you would start if we wanted to get really deep into astrotheology. You corner the universe. Quadrants, 4 quadrants, equinoxes, solstice, elliptical orbits, just to get into that stuff. But just knowing that there's more to the cornering or squaring of the circle.
Absolutely. And that deals with the Dionysus Ion cult, right? When you see that picture of the Ion, what is he doing? He's dividing himself and splitting himself into creation, right? The
Yep.
totality becoming the all.
Now, in the last episode, you did a cool presentation about that guy's article that talked about the Atrion, if I know I'm messing it up saying it right, the ancient Greek bread that they used to make the pasta, and that was used ritualized, and how by the changing of words and etymologies, that could mean little water snakes for that particular niche. But there's other forms of Greek bread that's old, goes back 4,000 years, and was ritualized as well, called prokus, placentia cakes. Go to the next image. Oh, before we even go there, here's an image of a Mithraic feast, a fresco. And there's a
Oh,
lot of
wow.
stuff to unpack there, all the little images, but this is the Mithraic feast. They had a feast as well that involves sharing of licuados in the breads. Um, and, what's in the liquid? We'll talk about that later. All right, next image. All right, plakus, the placentia cakes. So people talking about these old forms of cakes and pies and stuff. Ancient Greece got an old one, and for their flatbreads, layered flatbreads, you could think of it as baklava, but in ancient times, these flatbreads are used ritualized, and that's where they get the word placentia from because the placentia resembled that the Greek bread, ritualized bread with markings on it. Now the markings are dependent on for which god or time of season or what ritual you're performing. Is it an invocation? Is it a hex? What are we putting on the bread? The bread is a palette. It's an empty palette for you to put symbologies for an outcome to come later.
That's so cool.
You know? So let's go to the next image. Now, the bread for Dionysus. I'm going to mess up the name, Obileas.
Yeah, Oblias.
Yeah, because he's also the god of grain, not just wine, not just of that sacred red drink that we're making right here, the tea of the Pharaohs, but of grain. And Demeter. There's a lot of interconnection to what's happening there with his connection to Demeter in different rituals throughout the year and grain,
Well,
god of vegetation.
when you really get into Dionysus, right, what you see is that he's really the god of generation, of life and death and ecstasy, which comes through the changing of the cycles and the seasons. So he's intimately related. He's the same energy and image as the Kori, which is the child of Demeter. And oftentimes he is, remember, the child of Demeter in his earliest myths. Dionysus is the child of Demeter, the Kori is the child of Demeter. So they're both kind of very synonymous. They're representative of that cycle of the changing of the seasons of growth and death and spring, right?
Mm. Now, there is a Dionysic connection to Middle East and Egypt and ancient Israel. We talked about that through Ashkelon. That was a Dionysic stronghold as well as Aphrodite Urania. But they had these wine fields there dedicated to Dionysus, and those were the wine fields that were providing the wine to Egypt coming from Ashkelon. There's a big, we talked about that in other episodes, the connection there. And I'm bringing up those wine fields of Dionysus for a reason. to talk about that red drink again. Go to the next image. All right. Now, so right there, those are just some stylized breads. So you can see how people could shape breads into symbols depending on your cultic kind of belief. Now, next image, and there it is. All right. Now, when we think of not the homosoma, but the kykeon, uh, we've talked about some of the ingredients before, in that some people posit it has ergot because there could be barley or herbs in it. The grain that's
Well,
in it.
it's intimately connected, right, to the panspermia, which means the all grain, right? The all grain. So we're not 100% sure what this could have been, you know?
But we know that grain gets ergot, claviceps purpurea, and it drives you crazy and you see visions. That's a lot of authors have posited this. We
The
just
all
read it.
seed, I should say. It's the all seed. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. Now, there's two different versions of it. One version, you have pennyroyal. Um, there's two different versions, and they're conscribed in two different, let's say, aspects of the gods. But in the Homeric version or the Iliad, we're talking about the Odyssey. In the Odyssey, they talk about it. They mix, besides the cheeses that we're talking about, that could be activated cheeses and honey, spiced honeys, mad honeys, and ergot through the barley, but the wine, Promenian wine, they call it, I think, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, is part of what they added to that version of the kykeon to give it this reddish, purplish color. Um, in ancient history. So we're talking about a red drink as well that gets you, that does something. And some people call it
Right.
a porridge like reddish, brownish, purplish look. And why am I talking about that? Because it's grain and something red that gets you high. That's the food of the gods. Go to the next image. And that's the Eucharist. If you have something to say about that right there.
Right. The Eucharist, I mean, this is the central rite of the Christian faith, which is the eating of the body of Christ, right? The priest does a magic ritual in which the Eucharist, the cracker, becomes the literal embodied flesh of Jesus, and the wine becomes his literal blood. So when you partake in this rite, you are consuming the deity, right? And we understand that this is related to a lot of earlier traditions dealing with, as we've talked about, these various grain and nature gods, but most explicitly Dionysus. Dionysus, the god of wine, who is ceremoniously ripped apart and consumed, you know?
Mm.
And then is also, you have that virgin birth of the child that's hinted at in the Eleusinian mysteries with the return of the child to come, Iacchus, right? Or Plutus.
Woo! Mm. My brew is almost ready. I'm gonna give it another 5 minutes to steep there.
Right.
I
But
want to
again, we
make
have this
something.
blood chalice, this wine
Yeah.
chalice, right? That juice that we're consuming and then the flesh, right? And this is magical stand-in for a human sacrifice, So it's a symbolic human sacrifice.
Yes. Yes. And these little cakes right there, can be taken multiple ways. They could be marked multiple ways. Um, maybe that's a prakus. Maybe that's one of these ancient little cakes, a Mithraic cake, just being cleaned up,
Right? Sanitized and reformed over
sanitized.
generation.
Exactly. But maybe that used to have ergot, or maybe that was produced in such a way. Um, so we're speaking about the red color, and mind you, I'm going to show you my brew. If you could see it right here.
Oh wow. It's getting red,
Woo! It's steep
almost
and it's a
black.
red brew. In a minute, I'm going to strain it and put the sugar and the ice and all the magic ingredients.
Beautiful,
But
beautiful.
let's go to the next image. But that's what we're talking about. This is, what is it? Genesis 25, 29 through 34. That's Esau. You could see him on the left with the red hair. and he tells Jacob, "Hey, can I get some of that red porridge?" He says the word red twice. He wants that red porridge. And his brother says, "Well, if you trade me your birthright as the king of all heaven, and then yeah, I'll give you this red lentil porridge." And he says, "Oh, that's a good deal." And so
Right.
we're led to believe it's just lentils in there.
I wanted to bring up a comment from one of our fans here, Dion. It said, on an episode of Occult Explorers, it was explained that the original Eucharist involved a type of mushroom growing from the remains of a human deity or pharaoh or pope or loved one. Now, this had to do with a specific book that you had brought up a few years ago. Do you remember? I can't remember what the title of the book is.
Lee,
Yeah,
the
Lee is
author's
the
name is
author.
Lee, and what it was, he was positing that. Now look at
Mhm.
the timelines match up perfectly. That your loved one would die, and you go down to the tomb, and you replace mushroom spores on his body. Because when you get a mummy ready for mummification, sometimes they shave them, nick them, and then they put
Mhm.
oils or the sindon, the medicated sindon on there, and that could be inoculated with mushroom spores. And the decomposing body has the same um, has the nutrients, ideal nutrients that a mushroom would want to fruit. And so you put the spores on there, and it'll fruit 40 days later. So that 40 days a night connotation, and then you go down to the tomb, and there would be mushrooms growing on a dead body. On it could grow on a carcass, it could grow on wood. It grows on something that's decomposing and it fruits once you if you inoculate it correctly. And they knew how to inoculate. Obviously, that's what this whole video
Right.
series is about: is to teach you how to do that stuff, literally. So you go down there and you would pick that mushroom, and you could eat that and imbibe grandpa, as well as get high. That's why Jeremiah, that I showed you, they had to ban that. Stop going and getting high in the graveyard with your ancestors and making psychoactive drinks and dishes.
Right. So I found the book. The book is called From the Bodies of the Gods: Psychoactive Plants in the Cult of the Dead by Earl Lee. But yeah, that's where Dion got that particular idea from. That's his hypothesis. So it may be the original Eucharist. It's certainly what he believes, or at least what he posits.
Now, mind you, Earl Lee and all these other homies that we be checking out, we're in the 1%, 100% speculation. So don't come at us about our sources, because I make
Right.
a good sauce, is what I do. But check it out. We search for the most fringiest shit there is.
Yeah, for the fun of it.
Yeah, and guess what? It's scientifically plausible.
That's all that matters.
So, all right, I got my stuff strained here. And so let's get back to Esau, that red porridge. People posit there was some red meat in there because he didn't want it afterwards. I don't want this. Or check it out. Now they're saying it's pottage or lentils. Those red lentils that they cook, but when you cook red lentils, they turn yellow. So what would they have done to make it red? People talk about could be Syrian rue, which we've talked about as an additive in other recipes. Pomegranate seeds or sumac, which I have here. I have a big um, jar of sumac down there, which is a herb, Middle Eastern herb that's red. Now, because dyes half the time are psychoactive, are edible, or medicinal, culinary. And so this is how Jacob becomes Israel, because his brother Esau, the red one, wanted some red drink and said, "I'll trade you my birthright as the king of everything. Just 'cause I'm hungry. I want some of that red soup that you make. That's so good. Some magic red drink." And it's all based on food. Now, mind you, this whole segment right here, because after that, he tricks his brother. He gets his birthright. He goes back to mom and tells, "Hey, mom, guess what? He gave me his birthright for the red drink." And Rebecca goes, "Well, shit, we got to go get the blessing from Isaac, but he's going to know it's you. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to make his favorite dish. Go get me two goats." Minding you of Azazel, mind you, those two goats, huh? Come back with two goats. And she makes this kind of stew thing that Isaac likes. And he's blind, goes in the tent. And she tells Jacob, "Put the goat skin on your body." So he puts goat skins on. And then he goes in there and goes, "Hey, here's the food." and he eats it and he touches his skin and it's all hairy and he goes, "Oh yeah, it's Esau." And he goes, "Here's your blessing, son." And he like zaps him. Now he finds out it wasn't him and he was pissed, but he's like, "Fuck, it's too late. I already gave you the blessing." And at that point, Jacob turns into Israel, and that's how you get Israel. But mind you, there's even more in the culinary story because that was Genesis 25, that was Genesis 27. If you go to um, Genesis 30, go to the next image. There's a painting representation of it. Yeah, that's Rachel and Leah. Because what happens is Jacob marries Rachel, and one day Leah has these herbs. I guess her son had found the herbs, mandrake and plants, not just the root, but the whole plant. And he brings them to Rachel, and Rachel says, "Well, shit, I'll let you sleep with Jacob if you give me those mandrake roots." That's Genesis 30. This is all over food and psychoactives and some weird stuff. You know, if you want to get into the
Wild.
deep of it. And she sleeps with the husband, and she gets those mandrake roots in for some fertility right kind of stuff, you know, because
Well,
we're
in
talking about the.
Mandrake root, we're dealing with some serious heavy stuff, right? Because Mandrake is a nightshade, and it's a deliriant, so it will cause you to hallucinate, but more often than not, it will cause you to dissociate with reality. This is not a pleasant trip. But this is also Mandrake is often associated with magic, right? The roots look like a man. There's all these wild rituals associated with how you're supposed to harvest it. Sometimes you can only harvest it if there's the blood of a dead man present. You need a dog to protect you from the howls, you know, all of this superstitious stuff. But what's important too is that particular root is often associated with Medea and with her medicinal rites and with all of this kind of wild magic with the infamous witches ointments, so now we're getting into some really wild magic once you start to get into the mandrakes, dangerous
Oh,
magic. you
yeah,
know
yeah. Don't mess with. We don't have mandrake in my kitchen. We don't mess with that.
no, no.
Nah. So let's go to the next image. And we're talking about these red liquids. So there's another story of red liquid that's very interesting. Goes back to Egypt. Here's an old fresco of them in Egypt brewing the beer. Remember, Egyptian beer had the beer as well. It was a form of a bread loaf, a bread cake that was used to ferment into the beer to speed up the process and to control it. But they also have a red beer in Egypt that's famous. We've talked about this in other episodes. It deals with Sekhmet. Um, I don't know if I got an image of Sekhmet. Go to the next image and see. Let's see what's there. Oh, it's Best, but Best deals with it anyways. All right, so Sekhmet, Ra sends Hathor as Sekhmet to get revenge on the people because they're being mean or whatever, and he's pissed off. Well, she goes on a rampage, starts killing everyone. He's like, chill out. And there's no way to get her to chill out because Sekhmet is a pissed off lioness and just wants to. "Argh." So finally, they're like, all right, let's do this. They take a bunch of beer. There's different versions of it. But in the main version, they take a bunch of beer and they put into it red ochre or pomegranate seed to dye it red,
Oh,
like
interesting.
blood. Um, and in some stories, they pour it into the river Nile and turn it red, or they just give her all these jars of this dyed red beer because she just wants blood. And so she sees all these pots of blood and drinks it, but it's really beer, and they get her high. Kills her out, and she turns back into Hathor, and everything's peaceful.
Mellows her out, right? she
Yeah,
she goes into a beer coma.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, mind you, the best pot. They found a best pot in modern times. We've talked about this one too. And the ingredients in
Yeah.
it had blue lily, the nymphae. It had acacia. We're talking about multiple psychedelics. It had menses, saliva, semen. Like it actually not semen. It had only female stuff in it. Female inoculants, body fluids, along with psychedelics, and they knew it was red. It was red.
Right.
The drink of best was red. We didn't talk about that in the previous episodes. We talked about the ingredients in it and the psychoactive nature of it and the symbologies of Bess himself. But the drink was red, mind you, you know. So with that, I'm ready to start straining my tea of the Pharaohs, my red drink, the Karkade. If you want to take over and
Right.
talk a little and expand, and I'll start getting this ready.
So the big thing that they found in that best cup, from what I remember, yeah, they had the blue lily, the nymphea, and they had the harmala, right, which is really interesting.
Syrian
Plus,
rue, red dye. That's what
exactly,
they make the carpets for the jinn, the magic carpet, right, of Aladdin. It's red
yeah,
carpet dye, Syrian rue, which is MAOI. It's an
yeah,
inhibitor
Syrian
used with
rue.
DMTs, acacia, to turn it into the world's most powerful psychedelic.
Exactly, right? So it's a wild thing, and they the particular article, if you guys go search for it, it's in Nature. You just have to search for the best cup. They actually compare it to ayahuasca, and they're similar compounds. It's really quite interesting. It's amazing to think that we have this kind of science and research being conducted today. One of the truly cool articles out there. Let me actually, you know what? I can probably just find it here. Yeah, okay. Give me 1 second. I can pull it up because this is cool. I want to show you guys. Do, 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 do. So we'll remove, and we will go share screen. 1 second here. Where is that? Okay. All right. Multi-analytical investigation reveals psychotropic substances in a Ptolemaic Egyptian vase. So this is the article in Nature, right? Really, really awesome. And it's by the main writer is David Tanasi. Interesting stuff. The study presents a comprehensive, multimodal, analytical study of an Egyptian ritual bas vase of the second century. Right, beautiful stuff. But go check that out if you're interested in more. Really easy to find, just on Nature. But now we're going to dive into my little presentation of the day. So what I decided to do for you guys is bring together a bunch of classical sources that deal with bread so that we can get into some of the rites that have to do with the ancestors and death and bread that are across various cultures. But of course, we're going to start with the Greek. And of course, we're going to go to Homer, the Odyssey. And let's read this quote here. It says, "Around it I poured a libation to all the dead, first with milk and honey, next with sweet wine, third with water, and over it I sprinkled white barley meal." White barley meal, right? And this is really, really important. This particular white barley meal, it's a type of groats. If you look in the top of this particular picture here, you can see it there. But it was called the Enhitia, I believe. How do I pronounce that? Yeah, the Alfita. And it's like one step before bread becomes, before you start processing it into bread. The groats is what you get, and then you grind that up into flour, and then that becomes bread. So, really interesting there. You see, not bread directly, but even in the earliest of the Greek rites, you have this importance of grain and the offering of grains to the dead. So, the next source I want to show you is the Homeric hymn to Demeter. Let's check it out here. It says, "Blessed is he among men on earth who has seen things, but he who is uninitiate in the rites, who has no share in them, never has a like portion once dead, down in the dank gloom." So this is referencing, of course, the Eleusinian mysteries, and that you have to go through the rites of Demeter, and you're going to have to participate in the consumption of these ritual things in order to perceive in the dank, in order to retain your memory in the underworld. So one of the things I wanted to show you guys here is this is a classical Greek oven. This would be in everyone's home, and this is where you would also worship the goddess Hestia. And what we see here is these kind of pots at the top here. I want you to pay special attention to because these are magical ritual items as well. They're used for the boiling of the groats to turn them into a porridge. And this, we got to understand the importance of porridges to early peoples, especially to pre agricultural peoples. When we look at the physical anthropology and the archaeology across human history, we see that one of the most consumed foods of all time is grains that have been boiled with fats and fruits and nuts. And oftentimes these are then dried out into a form of like a pemmican. But this would be one of the most important human food sources. So we're seeing this kind of importance of this classical kind of porridge here in the ancient Greek. So one of the things that we see here is we talked a lot about this in the previous episode. We focused on the Anthesteria, which was the festival to Demeter and the Kori that occurs in Athens. Well, today I wanted to talk about that festival a little bit more in the panspermia, which we had discussed, but we're going to specifically focus on the last day of the festival. And this comes to us from the Scholia of Frogs. And let's read here what it says. It says, the Chi Troe is a festival at Athens. It is celebrated for the reason which Theopompus explains when he writes thus. Now the men, being saved from the flood, called the festival as a whole by the name of the day on which they again took heart. Again, they have a custom at the festival of offering sacrifice to none at all of the gods of Olympus, but to Hermes, Chthonius alone. And of the pots which all men in Athens boil, no priest tastes. This they do on the day, and those who survived at that time of the flood made propitiation to Hermes on behalf of those who had died. So you would make propitiations to Hermes on behalf of those that die at the same time as you're honoring him, right? You're honoring the ancestors. We're we're respecting all those who died in the great flood. And we do this by honoring Hermes Chthonius with these pots, with these boiled grains inside the pots. But here's the thing, the pot remains sealed and only for the dead, only for the ancestors, only for the gods, only for Hermes Chthonius, right? So I thought that was cool because that connects to your pot stuff, these
Hermes
magical
Chthonius.
symbols, right? Hermes Chthonius, the underworld Hermes, right? And this has to do with the confusing of the languages and the great flood that divides mankind. And Hermes gets people out of it, so they have to save him, or sorry, they have to propitiate to him, and ask for help for their ancestors to be saved as well. All right, let's continue here. So this is really interesting. This is actually one of these pots that would be given to the ancestors in which you would put these groats. So this is actually like a tall sealed pot that they found, but on it we see a depiction of the funeral rites themselves. So here on the right we have a woman who is offering various types of bread and fruits and grains, and she's bringing it to the grave marker, right? And on the grave marker, you see all these sealed pots. You see all those sealed pots with laurel leaves. And to the left, when I looked it up, scholars believe that that man is actually a ghost, and he's representing the person who's being honored by the woman on the right. But really interesting. So you have a pot that's depicting the honoring and showing other pots. you know, Very cool. So we're going to keep going here. So next I wanted to show you the Hecate rites. So these are something that get talked about quite a bit. We've mentioned them before. Our dear friend Shay has brought them up a couple times. They actually found recipes for making Hecate cakes. But what this has to do with is specifically there was actually a ritual where you would offer food once a month to the poor. And we have this, of course, from Aristophanes' Plutus. And this is where that particular rite is referenced. It says, she, Hecate, says the haves, the wealthy, send her out a supper each month, while the poor snatch it before it's even set down. So they would set these meals out at the crossroads, and they would also leave specific cakes at the crossroads, these honey cakes. And these particular honey cake traditions, as Dion was talking about, survive into modernity. We see them in the Greek Orthodox nowadays. So these honey cakes have evolved, they got larger over time, but the same kind of thing still persists within the Greek Orthodox Church, where they're offering honey cakes during, for your dead. All right, let's continue here. So now we're going to jump into the Roman tradition. This comes to us from Ovid's Fausti, and he's talking about what you need in order to honor the household spirits, the ancestors, the Lares, the Penates, the Manes, right? The spirits of the home and the personal ancestors. So what you would need is, according to Ovid, enough is a roof tiled, wreathed with garlands, scattered grain, a grain of salt, ceres, bread, softened in unmixed wine, Liber, and loose violets, right? So remember that ceres is a metonym for bread, and Liber is a metonym for wine. But here we see a ritual. This is actually from Pompeii in a person's home. This is a classical shrine to the Lares. And even in the background, you get a picture of how these particular rites would be performed. You have the protective daimons, the male and the female snake, you know. And what you would do is you would garland this rite, you would offer it grains of salt, grains of, barley, and then you would leave bread, and that would be enough. So now we're going to jump into the Zoroastrian tradition, which Dion had talked about quite a bit there. We had dived into the Zoroastrian dron, which is a specific type of ritual bread. So I actually managed, it took me quite a while. I couldn't find them because they don't like to take pictures of their rituals. They're very private. But I found a picture of the actual dron.
Well,
And look,
even then, that might not be drawn
yeah, this
because
is what,
drawn has
yeah,
9 markings on it.
right,
3 sets of 3 little squares. I mean, little notches. The same notches that are on the bottom of the Haoma filtration system.
right,
It's a replica of that. I'm telling you, I couldn't find it. I couldn't
right.
find it.
This was the closest thing I could find because they do talk about how on one side they have the cross.
This is Mithraic. That's what I was talking
Mm,
about. The ones that are quartered. This is the
right,
quartered one. The drawn has 3, 3, and 3 little notches. But they do a version of this as well because it was talked about in the. You have to just like you cross yourself, you have to cross the bread to
right.
activate.
I just think it's interesting that we have all this bread cross imagery. Not that it means anything other than that, right? So now we're gonna go into some classical Zoroastrian texts here. And what is this called? It's called the Pavlavi Rayavati. I'm so bad with these names, but yeah, this is from it's a Middle Persian text, and it's really interesting. It's going to show us some things here. It says, "O thieving, wicked body, great wealth was amassed by you in the material world, and today your sons and your brothers and kinsmen are fighting over it. And you did nothing at all of good for me, who am the soul, and those relatives do nothing at all good for you, and they do not even perform one drawn for your soul. And I
Not
am
even one
weeping,
drawn.
not even one for your soul, and am weeping in hell in the hands of the demons, and I must endure the affliction until the future body." So again, there's this whole thing that the ghosts are crying out. They need you to give them the ritual bread, right?
Yes,
Otherwise, they're suffering in hell. This is a theme that you see in many different cultures, you know?
that's what I'm saying. The bread is consecrated to the dead. At the heart of the premier mystery religions, if we're looking at the Brahmanic Shavite with that Soma, the Homa with the Dron, the Elistinian. Um, that's why I was looking at the Placus, the Placentia, and the Oblias. But in the Kaikion, it's in a you boiled it down. You're drinking bread because, mind you, beer is just bread in a bottle,
Right.
and fermentation is the gin, like of
Right.
Solomon's pot. That genie in
And
the
what do you
bottle is
think
the
is
fermentation of the bread.
right? What do you think is going to happen if you take groats, boil them, and seal them in a pot and bury it in the ground? It's going to turn into beer. Like,
The
so
gin.
right? The gin. Interesting stuff, eh? So let's continue here. So we got some more. It says, when an ustofreet is recited, which is a special type of magical prayer, then one is not authorized and left one gives bread also, and wine and herbs and rue. And that which they eat, as much as they eat, will not be of any worth to them. And this is likewise so for the drawn. There's this whole, in order to get the blessings, you have to give the bread, right? Like in order for the spell to work, the giving of bread is essential. This is one of these important things that accompanies every rite, it seems, in the Zoroastrian,
Well, and I thought it was all about the drink or the sacred fire in the Homa.
right?
I didn't know about the Dron. The
No, the
Ron.
drawing has a
Darun.
it's got its
Darun.
own it's got its own mojo, right? Like it's of course it's one of many, but it's important. It has its place, right? So let's continue here. It says the spirit of the drawn when it is consecrated does battle with those demons. 99 times he struggles so hard. He strikes those demons to the ground like flies and like hail when it falls upon the earth, right? So look at this. The drawn fights the demons for you. And why
Whoop.
do the dead need it? Because it protects them from the demons, right? Wow, isn't that cool? Magic bread. So now I want to get into the Egyptian. This is a really cool stela that I found, which has this. This is kind of a common Egyptian magical offering to Osiris, but it's a real great example. So this is called the stela of Sen Worsret. It says an offering given by the king to Osiris, the lord of Busiris, the great god, the lord of Abydos, that he may give an invocation offering of bread, beer, oxen, birds, alabaster, clothing, and every good and pure thing upon which a god lives. For the Ka of the revered sense Wasret, true of voice. And so when I looked into this idea of like even the offering of the voice, it like the bread is essential in order to get the voice. In order to get the ka, in order to have that magic, you have to give the bread. And it becomes even synonymous. There's all these shorthands for the offering of bread in the Egyptian. Like when you're talking about calling the name, it's also implied that you're going to be giving bread. That's how central the giving of bread is. Isn't that neat?
Hmm. Abydos, the Lord of Abydos, the underworld.
Right? Okay, so now we're going to get into Gilgamesh, our man Gilgamesh. So when I was diving around, I found this interesting passage in the Epic of Gilgamesh. This comes from Tablet 12 at the very, 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 very end. And it again, it just shows this tradition about having to feed the hungry dead. It says, him whose spirit no one to tend to it hast thou seen? I have lees of the pot, crumbs of bread, offals of the street he eats. What happens to the spirits who don't have anyone to tend to them? They're eating what's left over in the pots. They eat the crumbs and the offal, right? They're forced to go scavenge. They're hungry ghosts, right? You gotta tend to the ancestors or they become hungry ghosts.
That reminds me, I got to feed that ancestors pool today with some of that, the red liquid.
Right? So now I want to get into the Mayan. So this here is a priest who is making corn flour, which of course the corn god is one of the most important gods in the Mayan religion, and in maize was one of the most important sacred things, period, in their culture. So this comes from the Popol Vuh, which is one of the few surviving texts that we
Codex.
have.
Yeah, because they destroyed all the codexes, which
Yeah,
were like these
they
giant books that would pull out. It's like a comic book.
yep. Yep, they thought that they were blasphemous, right? They looked at the imagery and they didn't like it, so they destroyed them. It's the similar things that you see in Peru, where we now realize that their language is these intricate braids, and a lot of these intricate weaving tapestries that they had, the colonizers just burned them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so they also had those in the with the assets. It's called the Kipu.
Mm.
Quipo. And there's a saying you can make the Kipu sing. And it's using numbers binary. It's almost like C plus. If people know
Oh,
Kali
that's
Linux
so
or C
cool.
plus, any of that stuff. Um, and you take strings and you knot them with braids, and you know how to count it. Imagine if you did Braille and you're blind, you could read it like a
Oh
song.
man,
And then imagine you do poetry. Why does Braille have to be boring? Or you assume
right?
that numbers can be boring. What if you turn it into a song?
Well, that stuff gets so wild, right? Like, I got this really amazing book. It's by Dr. Reginald Crosley, who is an initiated Voodoo priest and a doctor, but he also is someone who likes to speculate about, quantum physics, but he does it through the lens of Ifa. And he
Yeah.
basically argues that Ifa is a quantum computing system because it works in 4 qubits and that it's able to map multiple dimensions. It's wild stuff. It's like
So that's
you
what
think of this
we
as
were talking
primitive.
about.
There's nothing primitive about Aoife, man.
No, that's
It's
what
like
the
high
episode,
math,
the ancestors polls IFA. That's what we were
right?
doing. That's why I went to
Right.
study in Africa with that. It's like, the research expeditions there.
Yeah,
We'll
it's
get some more of
powerful.
that. We'll pound some fufu.
Yeah, I know my mic is low, guys. I'm sorry. I've been having some mic issues. I will have to try and fix it after the stream. I'm not sure what the issue is,
Hello.
you know. Really apologize. I'll try to keep as close as I can to the mic. But I will work on it in between streams and get it sorted for you all. So please bear with me and apologies.
And so Karkade, the tea of the pharaohs, is also they partake of it in West Africa there.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Tell
it's
us
an
about
IFA
that.
drink. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's also a drink that they use down there in that tradition. We talked about it last time. We'll get more heavy into IFA. We were gonna go heavy into it, but we pulled the brakes for a second, but we'll go deep and we'll get Leslie and we'll just turn up.
Oh, we gotta.
So
But
I gotta get the tea out the refrigerator and take it to the next step, and we'll zoom in and we'll do one final step here before you get back to what you're doing there. He's all ready.
those were the sources that I had for you for this
Oh,
particular episode.
you're finished. Oh well, shit.
Yeah.
So here's the tea out the fridge. It's the
Amazing.
concentrate. This is hibiscus flowers that were strained and then boiled for about 10 minutes and then steeps for about 30 minutes because we were talking longer because I wanted a good steep. And I put a little pinch of sea salt in there because it helps extract it. Next, I'm going to pour this into a vessel and mix it with water and agave.
Oh,
Got
wow.
right
Yeah,
here
that looks so good,
my
man.
empty little pot. I'll put about halfway. Now, mind you, these ain't your precise weight, This is the things my eye here. Pour some of this in, water. Next, here's what I got. Agave. I'm not using sugar today. I'm using some
Oh,
agave syrup.
that's beautiful.
You like agave?
Oh,
It's made
yeah.
from like a type of a cactus.
Yeah, I know that they even have similar stuff in Africa. It's cool.
Hypoglycemic, just so you know.
Mhm. Better to be natural, you know?
You're right. Woo, almost there.
Oh, man.
Oh my. Insane.
The
Give me a second. I
simple
got
things
ice
in
right
life.
there.
Oh, we're getting some ice.
Got some ice. So you can see right here, ice in a wine glass. Going to take some of this
Keeping
right
it
here.
classy.
Oh yeah, we pour it in. And then next I'm going to dress it with some fresh mint leaves. I'll throw some mint leaves in there. I got some lime slices. Woo! Stir that up. Now, mind you, the longer I leave the mint in there, you'll get that flavor. Or I could have rolled up the mint and scuffed it up a little bit to release the essential oils. But here you go. Karkade or Jamaica
Beautiful.
under different names. Cheers. You know,
Cheers.
if Jacob or Esau wants to give me his birthright, I'll give you this cup right here of this red liquid. For sure, for sure, we'll turn up.
Oh man, that looks awesome.
Oh my God. You got to eat better in your life. You got to feel good, get out there and have fun. Shit's getting fucked up. They're messing up the earth, messing up our lives. Fuck it. Go to the beach, take a walk, eat good. That's what we got.
That's what we got. Man, truer words, right? That's the message from this show entirely, right? Live your life and enjoy it. Have fun.
You know, because they were enjoying in ancient times. Because as we unpack ancient history and mythology, it seems like they were eating good. Because it's through
Yep.
their diet that they were imbibing the mystery right.
And they're partying hardy. They're having festivals all the time. You know, everyone has this like idea that serfdom was this horrible nightmare, but then you read about serfdom and these guys are taking, they're working 4 days a week and they're taking every other weekend off. And I'm like, man,
Mm.
living off the land, enjoying the fruit of their own labor, like beautiful life, right?
Yeah, we got to achieve that now. You know, I live in the
Got to
ghetto,
go
but
back.
still, we having fun.
But you know what? Even where you are out in LA, you're growing your own food and you're eating well. You're making Jamaica, right? Enjoying yourself.
That's all we got is to enjoy ourselves, have fun, eat
Enjoy.
better, enjoy the
Eat
ancient
better.
mysteries. So, like, subscribe, share, comments. Next week, or no, on Sunday, they're building a coffin. They're going to bake up
Yeah.
some dishes. We got a group of people, so I'm going to be
We got
ready.
we got three special guests coming. Our dear friend Virgie Lee, who I'm also going to be doing a new podcast with Virgie, where we're going to be focusing on theater called Cue the Muse. But she will be joining us with her dear friends Christian and sorry, just let me see. Christian and Felix DeMello,
Felix Demila.
and we're going to be making coffin, so we're going to be getting into more bread rites, going to more cultures and expanding from what you saw today. So make sure you like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content. If you have your own interesting recipes that you'd like to share with us or mythological stories related to food, please comment and share below. We always appreciate hearing from you. And any final words for everyone, Dion?
Get in the kitchen and turn up. Join us
Get
next week. You should be in the kitchen as you're watching, cooking up some nonsense and having fun.
Make a coffin and talk about the dead. All right, everyone. Much love, peace, and take care. Until Sunday, we'll see you then.